What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 331 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I want to talk to you about X-Men Blue, Strangest. This is volume 1 of the new X-Men Blue series that started earlier this year. This is written by Cullen Bunn with like 15 different artists working on this book. There are a ton of artists here. I'm not going to read off all these names because there are a whole bunch of them and I would mispronounce like 80 of them. So there's a whole bunch of artists that worked on this book. This is kind of the beginning of a new jumping on point for the X-Men books started earlier this year. I remember a whole bunch of people talking about this like, hey, if you're a longtime X-Men fan but you haven't been reading for a while, this is a great time to jump into the X-Men books. And I remember thinking that was really weird because just about a year before this book started, the X-Men books all restarted with new issue 1s and new titles and new creative teams, new characters working with each other. And that was Extraordinary X-Men by Jeff Lemire, Uncanny X-Men by Cullen Bunn, and All New X-Men by Dennis Hopeless. And then those books ended like around issue 15, and then they started a whole bunch of new X-Men books. And that's not especially new. We've had like 15 Moon Knight books in the last 10 years, so that's not a new thing, but I thought it was weird that everyone was saying like, hey, if you like the X-Men and you want to jump in, now's the time to do it, and nobody was really saying that just a year earlier when the Marvel people were doing the exact same thing with Extraordinary, All New, and Uncanny. But that's neither here nor there. Time for me to talk about this book. So the premise here is that the original 5 X-Men from the past, they have been living in the present day for a little while, and they are now working with Magneto, trying to deal with threats to mutant kind. Magneto believes that these guys are a good reflection of Charles Xavier's dream. He wants to act on that dream and save mutant kind, and he believes that the threats he is sending them out to tackle are a threat to Charles Xavier's dream. But he doesn't want people to know that they are working with him because he is supposed to be dead, I guess. He's kind of laying low. So they are working. He makes a distinction. He says, I am not a headmaster and this is not a school. At one point they say something like, is that okay? And he says, you guys do whatever you want. I'm not leading this team. So basically he is just there to kind of point them in the direction of various threats, but he is not their leader. He is not working with them. And that was something that kind of disappointed me because when I first heard that this was going to be the original 5 X-Men working with Magneto, I got really excited because I like Magneto. Magneto is in like 2 issues of this book and he barely does anything at all. There is one subplot that is set up here that I'm assuming is going to be paid off in volume 2. That's interesting, but not a whole lot happens with it here. So I was a little disappointed that we didn't get more Magneto here. So if you're a big Magneto fan and you heard that this is going to be Magneto working with those X-Men, this isn't as Magneto heavy as you probably would like. Also, I have never been a huge fan of the original 5 X-Men being in the present day. Ever since that first happened at the beginning of Bendis' run on X-Men, I've never been a fan of that idea. I've never really liked the original 5 X-Men. Most of them are pretty boring to me. They're all kind of cardboard cutouts. None of them were fully fleshed out or interesting characters for the first 10-ish years that the X-Men were a thing. I'm one of those people that doesn't really get into the X-Men until All New, All Different X-Men with Giant Size X-Men issue 1, when Dave Cockrum, Len Wein, and Chris Claremont kind of revitalized the X-Men and introduced a whole bunch of new characters into the team. That's when I feel like X-Men really gets good. I've never really been a fan of when creators try to rehabilitate these frankly boring characters and make them interesting. That's what Bendis was trying to do on All New X-Men. That's what Dennis Hopeless was later trying to do in his run on All New X-Men. And that's kind of what Cullen Bunn is doing here. I've never really been a fan of these characters, so I went into this a little bit trepidatious, and I feel like somewhat rightly so. Cullen Bunn kind of has his work cut out for him here because in the relatively short time that these characters have been in the present day, they've already kind of accumulated quite a bit of convoluted backstory. Angel now has cosmic fire wings, and that's not really explained here. I believe that's something that he acquired in the Guardians of the Galaxy team-up story that Bendis did whenever he was doing X-Men and Guardians of the Galaxy, but that's not really explained here, so if you haven't read that story like me, you might be a little bit confused. You've also got some other stuff going on here. Beast is now a practicing sorcerer. I immediately was kind of resistant to that because Beast has always been a science guy. He has always been head over heels in love with science. He's never shown an aptitude for sorcery or even an interest in sorcery, so I thought that was a little weird, and they act like this is something that's been part of his character for a little while. while. I don't know if this is something that Dennis Hopeless did with his character in his run on All New X-Men, which was immediately before this book, but whoever it is that came up with this idea, at first I didn't really like it, but the further I got into this book, the more okay I was with it. There is some kind of secret darkness going on with Beast here. We don't know what it is, but he has some kind of possibly demonic ally that is training him in the mystic arts, so I kind of like that idea. I like that he is keeping secrets from the team, because a big thing, a big reason a lot of people really like the idea of the time-traveling X-Men being in the present day is that they don't like Adult Beast, and they don't like a lot of the adult versions of these characters. Adult Beast is kind of a horrible person. He's done a lot of horrible things in Warren Ellis's Astonishing X-Men. He commits genocide, and everybody just kind of says, okay, that's cool. So I guess a lot of people were thinking like this was a good chance to start over, and you don't have all that horrible stuff that these characters have done as adults. But now it seems like Beast is maybe going in the same direction of doing really dumb things and not thinking about the consequences of his actions. I kind of like that you have him paralleled with Cyclops, teenage Cyclops here, who has absolutely no desire to go in the same direction as his adult self. He has even ceded the role of leader to Jean Grey because he does not want to make a decision that might one day lead him to become that character that he sees in the present day in adult Cyclops. But then you have Beast, who seemingly is going down the same route that adult Beast is going down, just through different means. He's doing it with sorcery instead of doing it with science and becoming the horrible person that Beast became in the present day. But having said that, a lot of the characters in this book feel kind of incidental. Iceman and Angel both feel like they could be removed from this book and the plot wouldn't change at all. The only reason that they're here is because they were original X-Men, but at least in these 6 issues, they don't have anything to do. And in Volume 2, I would like to see them actually do something and actually have their own subplots developing outside of what's going on here. Because really nothing is going on with them. Like I said, if you took them out, it wouldn't change the story at all. Cyclops feels a little bit more integral to the story, but really, he doesn't have a whole lot to do here either. This is mostly Jean Grey's book, and I'm okay with that, except that she also has her own solo book where she can really shine, and you can really get into the mind of Jean Grey. Since you have a Jean Grey solo book, and then you have 4 other original X-Men here, I would like for there to be a little bit more of a balance. I don't mind Jean Grey being the leader of the team. I think that's a cool idea, although, like, not even 6 minutes ago, Beast was the leader of this team in Dennis Hopeless's All New X-Men, so I'm kind of curious why he stopped being the leader and why Jean is the leader now. But I don't mind someone other than Cyclops being the leader, but let's have some of these other characters actually contribute something to this book and be a little bit more than just decorations hanging on the wall. I would have liked to have had more Magneto, because I'm a Magneto fan, and all these other characters, I would have liked for them to have done more. I like the introduction of Wolverine's son from the Ultimate Universe, Jimmy Hudson. He was introduced by, I want to say, Nick Spencer in the Ultimate Origins or Ultimate X miniseries quite a while back, and or actually it might have been Jeff Loeb who created the character. I think it was Jeff Loeb, but I like that they're bringing him in here. I think that he's a good addition to this team. I would like to see them introduce other characters who are not the original 5 X-Men, just because I don't really care about those characters, but I do like the idea of Jimmy Hudson here. He has lots of potential because there's really nothing that's ever been done with this character. He pretty much has a blank slate, and I think it'd be really cool to see more done with him. I like some of the ideas of the villains of this book. I like the Bastion story. We get Bastion, who hasn't been seen since the events of Second Coming, and he kind of has a new modus operandi here that I like quite a bit, and I'm hoping that more can be done with him in later issues of the series. Really, a lot of the stuff here is set up for stuff that I'm hoping Cullen Bunn can do more with later on. And if he can, it will be really fascinating to see where he takes some of these story ideas, because a lot of times X-Men works best in the long game. If you have a series and it lasts 50 or 60 issues, it can be really interesting seeing some of these characters and subplots play out over a really long period of time. A lot of times I don't like it whenever a series only lasts 12 issues, and that's basically 2 storylines, and you don't really get to explore any of these really interesting subplots. A lot of the stuff here that's introduced, I would really like to see it play out over a very long period of time. I don't want to see them reboot the X-Men books yet again a year from now and change the creative teams, change the character teams, change the titles of the books. I don't want to see them do that. I want to see this book actually progress and go on for a good long while, and I want to see the creators creators take these subplots that they're working with here and then take them in very interesting directions, because a lot of the stuff that they're doing here is very interesting. I really love the Ultimate Marauders, or the All-New Marauders is what they're called, but they're all characters from the Ultimate Universe, I think. Most of them are. I like them. I like their leader. I like the idea that's going on there. I like Bastion. We have the Juggernaut and Black Tom Cassidy, and this is another instance of me instantly kind of rejecting something because I'm a longtime X-Men fan. Black Tom is working with the Juggernaut. That's something that I immediately was resistant to, because way back like 15, 16 years ago, when I first started reading X-Men comics, Black Tom basically showed his true colors and revealed that he wasn't really Juggernaut's friend. He was just using Juggernaut to serve his own needs, and that's kind of what kicked Juggernaut into pants and got him to join the X-Men. He was with the X-Men for a little while, and then he went back to being a bad guy around the time of Messiah Complex, I think. And I don't mind Juggernaut being a bad guy again, because he was never really a bad guy. He was someone who would rob a bank, but he wasn't somebody who was going to go out and kill a whole bunch of people. So I never really minded him going back to being a bad guy, but I don't like the idea of him going back with Black Tom Cassidy. I think that even a lunkhead like the Juggernaut would know that Black Tom is not really his friend, and he shouldn't be working with this guy. I feel like that's a little bit suspicious there. I don't feel like Juggernaut, even though he's kind of an idiot, he would know, yeah, Black Tom is not my friend. And speaking of Black Tom, he looks like Errol Flynn here. That's not what Black Tom looks like. Again, that's just a minor thing. If you're not a huge X-Men fan, if this is your first X-Men book, none of those things are going to bother you. But when I saw him, I thought, that's not what Black Tom looks like. He's supposed to have a big bushy beard, not a goatee and a waxed mustache. I thought that was a little weird. He looks more like the leader of the Circus of Crime than he does Black Tom. And for some reason, he has the Batman Beyond Batman logo on his chest. I don't know why Black Tom Cassidy has a bat on his chest at all. His powers are plant-based, so he shouldn't have a bat on his chest. But there's minor stuff like that that probably isn't going to annoy anyone else. It just annoyed me a little bit. So anyway, overall, I really like this book. I can't wait to see where they're going next with this series. There's a lot of really interesting subplots here, but a lot of this is setting up stuff for later on, and I'm going to be very interested to see what it is setting up as opposed to just reading the setup. But right now, I still like this book. I don't usually do numerical gradings, but if I did, I would give this like a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10. Pretty good. I liked it, despite some of the things that I went in not really sure what I would think. So overall, I would say go ahead and check out X-Men Blue Volume 1 Strangest. So those are my thoughts on this book. I hope that you guys liked this video, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll be back tomorrow with a different video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.